Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell, a podcast in which I, your host, Mark Ducano, talk to comedians, promoters and fans about the big questions in comedy and some of the small questions in comedy. But never ever, and I cannot stress this enough, will we discuss the medium questions in comedy. That's just silly. My guest on this episode is relatively new to stand-up comedy, but is already taking her debut show to this year's Edinburgh Fringe. An actor, comedian, and also an intensive care doctor, she's energetic and passionate about her work, both in the operating theatre and in the theatre. It's comedian Stefania Licari.
Hi.
Hey.
Sorry, Dana. I kept you waiting. I was like, and literally everything was like melting. The phone was super hot. So here we go. Yeah. So, let's do it.
Okay. Your CV just looks incredible. I mean, let's be honest. You've got you graduated in medicine in Milan. We know that you were a doctor, but you studied physical theatre in Poland, comedy in France, acting in England. I mean, where do you get the energy?
Oh wow! Thank you. Well, thank you for starting this with a compliment. Really appreciate it. Yeah, wow. I mean, now that you're reading that up, it does sound quite rich. Thank you. I don't know. I get asked this question very often where I get my energy. I usually make a joke about, drink coffee, but that doesn't apply anymore because actually I had to cut down the coffee. I feel very untruthful about that. Passion, I suppose. I mean, I have a quite good endurance generally, but I found like I'm the type of person, if I'm motivated to do something, I would literally rather die and not get it done. I know it sounds very dramatic, but I guess it's true. So yeah, I think, in practice, it's because I discovered acting quite late in life. Well, I discovered when I was a child, but I took up acting quite late in life, only a decade ago now. So I got into acting with that kind of hunger and urgency that I wanted almost to make up for the time I perceived I had lost, which I don't know if it's true, but in a way. So I just wanted to do as much training as I could and discover. And then it was so beautiful because I think once I realized I was willing to step out of my medical career and get into an acting career, I felt like a Pandora box had like opened up. So I was like, this is so fascinating, all this learning, all this growth and all this excitement. So I think I've been living on a high for 10 years now. I don't take any drugs. So it's a pure physiological or hormonal high.
You said you're interested in acting from a young age. So what was it that made you go into medicine and then sort of return, if you like, to acting? What was the initial drive and then what drove you to make the change?
Well, we're talking about very, very early memories. So I was like 5. So I have no recollection of like conscious decisions, but I remember I wanted to be an actress at that age. And from the age of 5 to the age of 10, that was constant in my daily life. So I was putting up more performances for my parents, and I would ask them to pay money to watch me. I think it was a sign of being an entrepreneur in a way. And then because I'm a December-born child, so I got to school, then I couldn't really read, and others could. And I wanted to bring fairy tales, and I wanted to do some acting scenes at school. So basically, I would kind of not force, but kind of really beg my mother to read my favorite fairy tales every night, and then I would memorize them. And then go to school and pretend I was reading them and acting up. So I think those were my first scripts, basically. So I did have this natural passion, and I don't know where it came from because nobody in my family was coming from an artistic background. Like most of my family is like architects or professors, not academic. So that there was not such a thing as an exposure to the entertainment world. So it was just natural, and it carried on for a few years. But then just family circumstances. I don't think at that age parenting was so sensitive and developed that people actually would listen to a kid that was only 5. So be an actress maybe was perceived like, oh, I want to be a ballerina or an astronaut, which I think you should listen to your child if they say they want to be one of them. So it kind of wasn't really nourished. And I don't know, somehow things evolved and my backup plan was medicine. And I believe it sounds very different, but in a way, I think what I was always interested were like human stories and relationships with people. And I felt medicine would give me that. So and I think that's what I like in art as well. So I can see in reality, even if it felt like it took a completely different path, maybe the driver was still very similar. And then a few years later, I graduated. I came to England. Everything seems very kind of ticking the boxes. So I graduated with honors. I had a very prestigious placement. I was earning money. But somehow something inside was still there, my passion for art. And then boom, suddenly I kind of really had a wake-up call, and I decided, okay, now I can afford another degree by myself. I mean, the first thing my mom told me when I told her I wanted to get into acting, she said, listen, I'm very liberal, I'm very, as a parent, so you can do whatever you want, but I'm not going to pay for it. I was like, that's okay. So yeah, so I got into drama school, and since then it was a point of no return, basically.
Yeah, but even then, you don't just do some acting. You dove into it, didn't you? You started your own theatrical company.
Yeah.
And tell me about the orchestra as well.
Oh, right. Okay, good question. So the orchestra was a play directed by Christine Landon Smith back in January 2019. So I had just come back from the Goliath training, and I felt I think I realized quite early stage in my acting career that you can't just sit on a sofa and wait for your agent to find work. And also, I just cannot do that as a personality. I need to play a role. And I felt, okay, well, maybe the next step is, if I created a company and I could produce my own work, either in a collaborative way, like the orchestra was a very much an ensemble piece, or like my solo work, like I'm doing at the moment. So I just really like the idea of producing and creating. And I think it's extremely empowering for an artist, and particularly for a woman, and particularly for a foreigner, to be able to give yourself the possibility to have a voice. So, you don't need to wait for anybody to give you that chance. You make your chance. So I think that's very empowering. I'm really excited. So that's why I created a company. And so the orchestra was a really nice French dark comedy play. We played at the Omnibus in Clapham. So that was my first real experience as producer, and I learned a lot, really valuable, very valuable lessons. Yeah.
So when did you decide that you would go from the acting and the comedy play into stand-up?
It's not a switch. So I don't feel I'm like leaving the so-called conventional acting and just doing stand-up comedy. I feel I'm very much open to variety of acting. In fact, I'm very much in love with any type of acting. I'm soon recording a horror film, and I'm still casting for dramas and stuff. So it's not that I don't like the rest at all.
Yeah.
I think because I went after my drama school in England, I went to study with Philippe Gaulier in Paris for almost 2 years. And so that's when I developed both a taste and I would say a talent for comedy, but also kind of realized that realistically every time I used to think of myself, I was like this big drama actor, like the next Anna Magliano, Sophia Loren, everybody, she enters and everybody cries. I never really managed to make anybody cry. In fact, actually, I managed to make people cry during my comedy show. not because it's bad comedy, just because there is a sad part. But and I was like, oh, I don't know, something is not fully connecting. And then obviously it's a comedy school with Philip, and we did clowning and comedy. And I was so fascinated, and I realized I was very good at it as well. I mean, the second year, not the first year. First year was the drama. But yeah, and I just fell in love with it, and I just got obsessed about it. And then from comedy acting, I got into stand-up. So it's kind of both. So it's not pure stand-up I'm doing or I'm interested in. It's just the entire world of comedy at the moment is my kind of true love. Mm-hmm. My current state, I would say.
So when the arts kind of closed down for a significant period of time, obviously you couldn't really perform or do comedy, but much, if at all. But you had a profession to fall back on. I'll say fall back on, an important profession.
Yes. Actually, I did a lot of acting as well during the lockdown, paradoxically.
Okay.
Well, the lockdown for me was a very interesting phase, a period of my life, because all started really badly, obviously, the first few weeks, let's say, the pandemic. And yes. I don't usually work at the hospital as much as I did during the lockdown because I suddenly had so much free time. And I'm trained in intensive care. So obviously intensivists were the doctors that were most requested. But I actually did a lot of acting because I told myself after the adjustment, the first few weeks of the pandemic, I was quite upset. But then, then you see, kind of something switched in my mindset. And I thought, well, I have two options here. I could either go to the hospital, be exposed to all these tragedies, come back home and cry all day long, also far away from my family, or I could ask myself a more empowering question. And that question was, how can I turn this situation into not just a great opportunity, but the most empowering thing I ever done in my life? And then what happened was I started looking for opportunities to turn over. So, for example, I would work in hospital. Everybody obviously was very upset, including myself, including the patients and the relatives and nurses, doctors. But because I'm a comedian inside and I was trained, somehow I naturally got to a point and I started using comedy and jokes and stuff to kind of help me. But then what I realized is it helped everybody else. And it was so beautiful to have people telling me, oh, we love doing a shift with you because it's always better. Despite so many people are dying around us, you have this lightness and this joy. And this joke just made us laugh for 1 minute. And that 1 minute out of 24 hours of tragedy is a life savior. And that was an incredible discovery in my life because I felt there is a power in art and in comedy particularly, that I maybe knew rationally before, but now I really experienced. So for me, comedy was like my life savior. And I think it became life savior of so many people around me, or so many people that somehow were impacted. So I made also a web series called To My Doctor's Advice, completely homemade. Again, this from my sofa. And that also won like several awards, film festivals, and then made me realize that there is a need for laughter and humor, especially during tragedies, not despite of tragedies. So somehow in the society, sometimes we have the concept that, oh, this is really sad. We cannot laugh. We should not laugh. We should not be, finding a moment of lightness because it's not fair. But that's wrong because we can't possibly be sad 24/7. And having a moment of relief, it's very human. And I think it really helped people, myself and people that somehow were impacted by this, be reminded that we still had life. Because working on a front line, it was very much like working in a war, basically. And people were just dying constantly. I mean, I've never experienced anything like that. And we needed moments that we could feel, okay, that's life. That's life happening. It's somewhere.
Yeah.
And you can only find it inside because we couldn't really see around us. So, yeah, I became very much a kind of an advocate for art and comedy, and my love for comedy just became like boom, just exploded. Yeah.
And that series, My Doctor's Advice, I mean, you modestly said it won a few awards. It got, I think, 8 wins and 7 nominations, all from Venice to Vegas. So, I mean, I think you probably want to give it a bit bigger of a shout out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, again, it's kind of homemade, literally, with an iPhone that would be overheating most of the time and during the recording. Obviously, during lockdown, I couldn't meet up with anybody. So in the series, I'm playing a doctor, then it's a little bit bizarre and eccentric, and I'm having online consultations with patients that are asking real questions. The doctor always gives these bizarre answers, and I wasn't meeting with any of the actors. Everything was recorded remotely and then edited remotely. So it's very much homemade. So I was so kind of surprised that she went so well. But I think what underlies is just this need to kind of recreate a new emotional connection with the medical world. And that become also now my drive for my current show. So I just want to offer, I want to humanize doctors again.
And of course, your new show, which we will talk about, Medico, reprises you in the role of Dr. Anna La Rosa, who we met in My Doctor's Advice.
Yes.
Is playing a character, is that your acting side? Is it keeping you personally off the stage to have another persona?
Such a great question, Mark. Well, I mean, the character I'm playing on stage is in a way quite far away from the initial character of the web series. It's definitely more refined, and it is incredibly close to myself, incredibly close. So I loved the idea of creating kind of a mystery in the show, and that's why I chose a character of comedy with a bit of stand-up rather than a pure stand-up, because what I wanted to recreate is that sense, that fine line between reality and fiction. And in a way, this is like to get the audience to experience what happens in the hospital, because sometimes it's so surreal to be in a hospital situation scenario, life actually, that you kind of lose the track, what is real, what is surreal. And I feel in a way I want to recreate that with my show. I like then audiences, they're very much like, they always ask me, I did think that was true, but is that true? Or, oh, that can't be true. Oh, but actually, it's true. Oh my God. So I love that. It's on purpose. It's on purpose. So it's just to, so that's why the choice. But again, the character is extremely close to myself. And everything in the show somehow starts from a place of truth. Then obviously some of it is a little bit exaggerated for the purpose of comedy, etc. But everything, so it is very personal, and I always feel very vulnerable, and sometimes I cry after the show. I don't know why. I mean, even if the show goes very well, so it's nothing to do with the show. I think it's just kind of that vulnerability and kind of opening up and say, well, this is actually my life story here on stage. So yeah, it's all very personal.
I mean, we talked about your energy at the beginning, and I think from my observation, I've seen the show a couple of times, and from my observation, I would say that you do come at it with a lot of energy. In fact, if anything, I think you're probably the most excited comic I've seen on stage.
Oh, wow.
It's just so, you seem just to be so like you're excited to be there, or to, and it's energizing in the room. Do you feel that every time you go on, because you're going to be doing essentially the same show night after night, and you've got Edinburgh coming up. You're going to be doing it over and over again. Do you think you can sustain that kind of excitement and energy? Is it still that exciting for you every night now?
Oh, wow, this is such an interesting comment. Well, thank you very much. I take actually as one of the best compliments I could possibly receive. I remember Philippe Gaulier was teaching us that you need to have that spark in your eyes as an actor. You need to be on stage and it needs to be clear that you enjoy, because if you don't enjoy, don't expect the audience will enjoy watching you, right? I like to think it comes naturally, because for me it's such a bliss and it's such a gift to be able to be on stage, not just because I really enjoy it, and it's an activity I generally enjoy, but also I feel it's a privilege. I'm thinking every time before I go on stage, I think, wow, there are people here. They came to listen to me. They want to hear my voice. They actually even paid the money for it. And I was like, wow, that's a privilege. I'm here. I'm a human being. And again, particularly, I'm a woman. And again, particularly, I'm a foreigner. And these are people. They're here to listen to my stories. And it's so heartwarming, and I'm so happy to be able to do that. So I don't think it's never going to change. I don't think I'm never going to get to a point that I'm not happy or so happy to be on stage. Never.
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, I think that's it. Just automatic. The moment I step on stage, just happy.
I opted not to use the phrase "you look like you have a sparkle in your eyes," so I'm glad that you used it instead of.
Oh yeah, please use it. I'm gonna quote you in my promotion leading up. It's a great compliment. I'm really grateful. Thank you.
You talked there about part of the excitement is because being a woman and being foreign and these people coming to see you. Do you find that you've had any advantage or disadvantage because of being from Italy or being female?
Well, at the very, very beginning, when I was in drama school, I did feel that there was a push for the international actors to trying to get as close as possible to a British version of them. Not necessarily, the teachers were very liberal and very open, but I think just generally everything around us, the choice of casting and the type of teaching at times. So I think my first approach with acting was very much like, okay, I need to try to become more British somehow. And it wasn't necessarily, I know, it turned out to be impossible despite I tried really hard. I guarantee I tried. Then I got to a point, so maybe that was perceived as a disadvantage. Now, whether it was a disadvantage, I'm not sure. But 10 years ago, when I started, I did hear casting directors telling me, with that accent, it's impossible. Or, I don't know, you just look too Italian or something. So I think there was a prejudice, which very likely I didn't listen to. So yes, I did try to conform, but somehow very quickly. And that is also very much thanks to Philippe Gaulier, who used to say, oh, we hate her when she's trying to be more British, but we love her when she's Italian. I think that really helped me to embrace my roots. And now I feel that the truth is, I don't know still whether it's an advantage or a disadvantage to be a foreigner actor in the UK. But what I know is that the British audience so far has been very welcoming, and I cannot be different from myself. Yes, I can put a British accent now because I studied. Whether I need it, most likely at the moment, no. I don't need to be the next Juliet. I don't look like Juliet. I don't move like Juliet. So I'm very happy to embrace my roots. And I think the British audience is ready for something different, for stories that are not the same and again. And, I'm very grateful to this country. I'm a British citizen now. I've been here so many years, and I feel, well, guys, I want to share with you where I come from, who I am. And in a way, I'm in hybrid now because I've been, I'm a little bit like you as well. So it's a sharing that is more truthful now. I feel very much comfortable with who I am, and I don't want to hide it. I want to show it. And I think the audience deserves the truth and not like some kind of fake version. You can play a character. So we're talking here about your own stories. You can play a character that is very far away from you. Absolutely. So by all means, cast me in a, I don't know, Line of Duty detective. I mean, I don't know what would do, but I better do TV sitcoms. But yeah.
You've talked about the Col Philippe Gaulier a couple of times there.
Yeah.
When you're Italian learning comedy in France and then performing it in England, is this a cross-cultural conflict or is something that resonates across all cultures that you can say, well, this works for everybody? Or otherwise, is there an instance where you say, well, I was told this and that just doesn't work with this kind of an audience?
Well, the beauty of comedy, I believe, is that the unifying moments of shared laughter. And I think that is universal. So it is absolutely a privilege and almost necessary, I think, to study comedy in an international environment. Because when things work, they work everywhere. And that's when they really work. Then you can have finesse. And, depending in which country you're performing, then you can have more topical type of humor. But I think on a general level, human beings in general share a sense of what people like, what they like, what is humor.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, again, going back to embracing your roots, if you study in an environment that is kind of neutral in a way. Plus, in this school, there were people coming from every part of the world, from the States to Japan. So it was such a richness of cultures and upbringings. I think when you realize that the only way to be truly comical is to embrace yourself, who you are, which is inclusive of your roots, not only, so it's also your personality, your mannerisms, your likes, your niche in comedy. Then once you are yourself, then I think you could potentially be liked by any culture. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't even matter which language anymore. And so I think that's an incredible opportunity that I had to study. I mean, just Philippe obviously is the master of comedy and clown, but it's in an environment that was, I don't know, it was just itself. It's like a different planet altogether, all the planets together, and then boom, a different world. Yeah. Very important in comedy, yes.
Yeah. So from creating your character or from putting your comedy style into your show, did you draw inspiration from other characters or other comedians or actors that you saw?
Well, I've been, since I fell in love with comedy, I've been studying comedy nonstop. I would basically self-diagnose with obsession. So I can't even make a list of the people that have inspired me as a comedian because there are so many, and it almost wouldn't be fair. But so anything from pure stand-up to character comedy to clowns. So the inspiration mainly is I think on 2 levels. One is the technicalities, because every time I watch somebody, I very much dissect scientifically, like an autopsy. So the part, the comedy, the joke, I dissect the performance. So it's always very important. You learn so much when you watch fellow comedians. And then the other thing is the inspiration, the drive that I want to see in the comedian. And you can see when their work is, again, the result of embracing who they are or a mask they're putting up. And generally, when it is embracing who they are, it works extremely well.
Yeah.
And I think among everybody at the moment, possibly the person I got most inspired at the very beginning and most grateful is Colin Holt. Grateful because somehow he got to know me. I was initially a member of his audience with Anna Man shows, and then he liked my sense of humor as well. And he invited me, so I was a regular guest for some of his shows. And it was incredible for me because he's so good, and I respect him as a wonderful artist, a wonderful person. And I felt it was just a great opportunity for me, quite new, to stand up, be given the chance and the trust about somebody that is so established and so well known. So I'm very grateful and just so much in admiration. I've seen his shows like multiple times, not just I participated as a comedian, but I also just watched it multiple times. So yeah, that would be a name I would definitely mention as an inspiration.
Mm-hmm. And have you so far, apart from the lessons that you've been taught, have you learned any lessons for yourself from your own experience?
Many. Do you mean acting-wise or life-wise?
If there's maybe something that influenced your comedy specifically, or for you personally.
Well, there is something that happened in my life that has got an impact even now, and I think it's not directly connected with acting or comedy in a way, but it's a drive. And I think in a way, in any job you do, maybe particularly in the entertainment industry, where things are so competitive and it can be quite demoralizing at times, I think having a strong, well-fed and nourished and trained mindset is like the starting point. I mean, even before any, skills training. Yeah. And I've been in self-development for 20 years now, so I'm very familiar with mind coaching and etc. There's always been very sensitive to episodes of my life where I could learn a lesson and keep using. So there is this episode that happened maybe 10 years ago now, just before I got into acting, maybe a couple of years before that. And it still resonates a lot. So basically, in any moment of difficulty, this comes back to my mind. Mm-hmm. So I was doing an ultra marathon in the desert.
Of course you were, yeah.
I was, yeah, in Algeria. It was 160 miles, 250K. Before you say it's insane, I agree with you. I agree. There's no doubt. I'm not saying that I would not recommend it. But I used to do quite a few ultras up to a few years ago. Then I got a bit busy lately. But anyway, the story is I'm towards the kilometer 200. I'm getting really tired. Lots of other people have quit. It was a non-stop race. You didn't really have time to rest. So you kind of didn't even sleep. You just kept running in the desert. So at this point, I'm getting really tired. And I'm almost thinking, I don't know if I can make it. But I carry on until the last checkpoint before the final destination, which was 21 kilometers before the end. At that point, I'm in a completely body disaster, and there are only a few runners left. But there is this Spanish guy who says, hola, chica. Listen, if you want, we can do the last stretch together. It's the middle of the night. It will be safer, and we are exhausted. So we go together, and it's really pitch dark. And at a certain point, his GPS stops working. My GPS stops working. And it's so pitch dark that we can't see any route. And there is a big rock in the desert. and we lean against the rock. And that's a moment of complete despair. I start crying, and we just say, oh my God, we lost. What's going to happen? Are we going to die? Because we have basically almost no water. We are exhausted. It's really cold. I guarantee the desert gets really freezing cold at night. Mm. And we spent possibly what I perceived as an hour in this form of despair because we could not find the way. We didn't know. We could not see anything.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, I was there shivering, and I thought, oh my God, we're going to become unwell. And then suddenly something switched. We looked into each other's eyes with a little torch, and we said, we just go this way, completely random. We said, just keep moving. And Mark, I swear to God, 5 minutes later, we were at the destination, at the camp. The reason we didn't see it because the desert can be so brutally dark. You literally don't see past something. Plus, the camp was like middle of the night, and there were no lights either. Wow, that was me. You know what, Stefania? Never give up in life because you never know how close you are.
Wow.
So I'm taking that lesson with me, I guess, forever.
Well, that is a powerful lesson and quite the story. Although, in fairness, as I commented at the beginning on your energy, if someone told me, "Oh, Stefania ran an ultramarathon," I think, yeah, that makes sense. You talked briefly there about Colin Holt and appreciating the comics you see. You obviously see a lot. Now that you're sort of inside the comedy industry, do you still find the time? Do you still make the time to go out and watch as comedy as much as you did before?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I watch somebody basically weekly. The only time I don't do it if in that week I do have a show myself, so I'm trying to spare my energy. But regularly. I think first of all, I really like supporting the arts and a fellow comedians, but also it's just such a great learning opportunity, and it's a great fun. I mean, I love comedy. I could talk about comedy all day long, and sometimes I do, and I can get deadly boring with the non-comedians. But I just read comedy. I read about comedy. I watch comedy. I talk comedy. I dream comedy. I write comedy. It really is an obsession, and it's become like my best friend. So absolutely, I go all the time. Sometimes I go and watch drama pieces as well. So I'm trying to keep a variety, but I tend to be drawn to comedy a lot.
Now, your show, Medco, has had a lot of positive reviews. How do you deal with reviews and feedback like that?
When they're good, oh my God, I open a really good bottle of Italian wine and I celebrate. Yes. So far they've been good actually. So I haven't really experienced bad comments touching good, but I'm sure that will happen. I mean, you can't possibly be liked by everybody, and I would not want to. That's fine. Yeah. So yes, I don't know. I'll deal with that. I think I have become much better over the last few years with feedbacks. And again, thanks to Filippo, actually, because it's very famous for his very harsh methods at times. And I remember Sacha Cohen-Baron, who also trained with him. Once he wrote an article in The Guardian, and he said, once you past those negative comments and that sadness you feel inside, then something really opens up. And the reason is once you accept the feedbacks, then you can really listen. So I'm very much now, sometimes I still get upset if I don't get a good feedback, but it takes much less to recover. And I'm really trying to look into, okay, let's use it. I mean, obviously I'm not perfect. Obviously I need to improve. Obviously I want to improve. So let's try to listen. I also become much better to listen, to select the people I'm listening to, because, everybody feels like they want to give you opinions sometimes. So you might not want opinions from everybody. So I'm very careful. I read the reviews, and I really appreciate the time. First of all, people taking to come and see and review. So for me, that's already, I start from a gratitude place of like, okay, thank you very much. Even, suppose somebody didn't like my show, but they still took the time to come. So I'm grateful. And then is there something that I can use? Is there something that makes sense? Maybe something I didn't see. So I have become better. I used to be terrible. I used to, as soon as Philip says something, I would just spend the night crying. Now I'm better. I'm very much better. Seriously, I don't think I cried for a feedback for quite a few years now. So I have improved. But I think celebrating is very important as well, because I do have the tendency to move on very quickly from one step to another. And sometimes I don't acknowledge the effort it's taken me and actually how proud I should be. I tend to say a lot of thanks and congratulations to my team and people that support me. And sometimes I forget almost to say thanks to myself, to my body, to my voice, to my energy, to my drive. And so now I have this kind of little tradition that I buy a really good bottle of wine and I wait until after the run, and symbolically I celebrate with a glass and I tell myself, and I force myself to give at least 24 hours of just enjoy that celebration before I move on to the next step. I think it's very important to feel proud of yourself, because otherwise your body and your subconscious is like, oh, well, you push, but you never say anything good to me, so blah, blah, blah. No, I thank you.
Well, we've talked about Medico a little bit. Let's just review what it's all about and where is it on and when can we see it?
So it's a medical comedy. It's a hybrid, as we said before, between character comedy and stand-up with a strong element of storytelling, and some of them are quite moving. And again, a lot of storytelling is really coming from a place of truth. I'm talking about the medical world, I'm talking about immigration issues, what it takes to become British. And basically, I'm looking at the British culture from my Italian eyes. The show is now on Edinburgh Fringe soon. So I'm starting on the 4th of August. I'm doing a full run at the Just Tonic, the Nucleus on Pleasance, at the subatomic room until the 28th of August, except the 15th. And it's in the afternoon, 3:10 p.m. So I'm really excited. It's my first time in Edinburgh as former. Yes, my Italian comedians friend, they told me the weather. Be careful about the weather. It's number one tip among Italians, the Scottish weather. I'm ready. I know everything about the Scottish weather. Also, they said you can find really good fried pizza, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it.
You could get anything fried in Edinburgh.
Here we go. So, yeah. Edinburgh Fringe will be the next step. And then there's some plans but there's nothing confirmed and established yet for autumn. So we'll see. I invited quite a few theatre programmers to come and see the show in Edinburgh. So let's see what happens in the next few months. But the idea is to continue touring, because it's a comedy show. So it's nice to keep developing and to get to a point to see how good can that become, or what can you discover, or what can I discover about myself with touring? Because that's basically like a really empowering question in a way as an artist, like to ask yourself what person you need to become to be able to do a solo show and to produce it. And that's what really interested me in the beginning when I decided I wanted to do a solo show. It wasn't just the target itself. It wasn't like, oh, I want to do a show and have a lot of people coming and sell out shows. That's kind of, it's a really nice, favorable outcome. But I think the first question was like, who do I need to be able to have a successful solo show? What does it take to be alone on stage for an hour and be confident about it? So I learned so much. It's so priceless to be able to do this. It was terrifying at the beginning, very much terrifying. But yes, better now.
So I'm going to ask you if you can summarize for me what to you is comedy in a nutshell.
I believe comedy is a way of looking at life.
Mm-hmm.
That's very much a nutshell. No, but seriously, I feel, and that's why I'm so passionate about comedy, because it's almost like if you can look at life and see something comical basically all the time, mm-hmm. You're safe. You're just safe, because no matter what happens in your life, at some certain point, you'll be able to pick up yourself. Mm. And I feel like I live in a world where the colors are different and the situations are different than maybe if I didn't have these comedy eyes. Because everything somehow is an opportunity I see almost like joy and life everywhere. And that's because I can find something funny in every single bit. And that's what I really admire about comedians in general. They just tell you a scene, something just happened, and they tell you in a way you can understand that their way of looking at life is so bizarre, so beautiful, so childish. Not childish, childlike. So that's this beautiful naivety. So yes, I think that's what comedy is for me, and I think I'm blessed, and I do have the spirit. I hope it stays. I hope it's not a temporary passing through.
Well, I love it. I mean, your energy and your excitement and your passion is inspiring and boundless, it seems. So thank you for that. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you, Mark, for your interest and talking to me. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
I will look forward to seeing you in Edinburgh.
Thank you. See you there.